Yeah. I mean, if someone wants to do the Mangalacharan, or I can do it, no worries at all.
Yes, please
Dennis
do.
Prabhu is the host, so
I'm
I'm
not
able
yet ready.
Okay.
Can you, Mataji can take us through the Mangacharan
Okay, yeah, just give
before I
me
get ready.
and just get myself ready.
Okay.
And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to serve all of you and serve Srimad Bhagavatam. If I do make any mistakes, please do correct me. I'm able to do this service today with the blessings and mercy of my Guru, with the lordships and with the blessings and mercies of all the Gurus and Acharyas. Thank you. Om Ajnana Timrandhyasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manubhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadandikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padana Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakha Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhaiva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So today we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 7, Verse 7. So I'll just get it on the screen. Sorry, we are reading Canto 1, Chapter 7. Apologies. Am I right in saying so, Mataji? We are reading Canto 2, Chapter 7, Verse 7.
Yes, Mataji. 2.7.7. I think Dennis Prabhu, your mic is switched off.
Yes, Canto 7. Canto 2. Yes.
Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Chaivam Narottamam Devam Saraswatim Yasim Tato Jayaputri Rai Nashta Pramishya Patreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Vittamashmiki Bhagavatam Namaskritam Kamam Dahanti Kritino Nanu Rosha Drishtya Rosam Dahantam Upatena Dahanti Asahyam Soyam Yat Antaram Alam Pravishan Bibheti Kamah Katham Nu Punar Asya Manaha Shayeta. Translation by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Great stalwarts like Lord Shiva can, by their wrathful glances, overcome lust and vanquish him. Yet they cannot be free from the overwhelming effects of their own wrath. Such wrath can never enter into the heart of him, the Lord, who is above all this. So how can lust take shelter in his mind? Purport: when Lord Shiva was engaged in severely austere meditation, Cupid, the demigod of lust, threw his arrow of sex desire. Lord Shiva, thus being angry at him, glanced at Cupid in great wrath, and at once the body of Cupid was annihilated. Although Lord Shiva was so powerful, he was unable to get free from the effects of such wrath. But in the behavior of Lord Vishnu, there is no incident of such wrath at any time. On the contrary, Bhrigu Muni tested the tolerance of the Lord by purposely kicking his chest. But instead of being angry at Bhrigu Muni, the Lord begged his pardon, saying that Bhrigu Muni's leg might have been badly hurt because his chest is too hard. The Lord has the sign of the foot of Bhrigu as mark of tolerance. The Lord is never affected by any kind of wrath. So how can there be any place for lust which is less strong than wrath? When lust or desire is not fulfilled, there is the appearance of wrath. But in the absence of wrath, how can there be any place for lust? The Lord is known as Apta Kama, or one who can fulfill his desires by himself. He does not require anyone's help to satisfy his desires. The Lord is unlimited, and therefore his desires are also unlimited. All living entities but the Lord are limited in every respect. How then can the limited satisfy the desire of the unlimited? The conclusion is that the absolute personality of Godhead has neither lust nor anger, and even if there is sometimes a show of lust and anger by the absolute, it should be considered an absolute benediction. Hare Krishna. Okay, so it's a beautiful verse,
Hare Krishna.
and we are into the 7th verse of this chapter. Now, as we know, in this chapter and starting from the previous chapter, Narad Muni had asked a few questions to Lord Brahma, and Lord Brahma is answering the questions of Narad Muni. Narad Muni basically asks him 6 primary questions. Some of them being, what are the symptoms of these material creation? Who is the ultimate shelter of this material creation? Who is the source of this material creation? During the time of pralaya or destruction, where and in whom does this material creation take shelter in? And where is this material creation conserved during the time of pralaya? And what are the ingredients of this material creation? So these are the questions that Narad Muni primarily asked Lord Brahma. Now, one of these questions is being answered in verse 7, the verse we are reading today, and that being, during the time of Pralaya, or during the time of annihilation, where does the material creation take shelter in? Now, as we know, in the previous chapter, Lord Brahma gives the answer to that, in verses 39 to 46. In chapter 6, Lord Brahma says that Vishnu is the shelter for creation as well as the shelter for all of the material energy during the time of Pralaya. Pralaya is the time of destruction or annihilation. And we have seen how the wonderful characteristics of Vishnu is explained, where the Purusha avatars are explained by Lord Brahma in the previous chapter, and mainly Karnadaksha Vishnu or Mahavishnu, and then from whom the entire material creation starts or is created, and then how the Garbhodaksha Vishnu, the Lord as Garbhodaksha Vishnu enters into each universe, and then further the Lord as Kshirodaksha Vishnu enters each individual entity and stays in the individual entity next to their soul as the Paramatma or the Super Soul. So we hear about all of these from Lord Brahma in the previous chapter. And in the final verse of the previous chapter, it is explained how these Purusha avatars, so the Lord creates these Purusha avatars for the material creation. To be able to create the material creation, the Lord incarnates into these three Purusha avatars. So these three expansions, as we were discussing the other day, they are the Purusha avatars, but they are also Leela avatars. Why? Because the whole creation of the Lord, or creating the material universe, is nothing but a pastime of the Lord. So to incarnate himself and create the material world through this incarnation is the big overall pastime of the Lord. So these Purusha avatars, they are Purusha avatars, but at the same time, they are also performing a Leela, the Leela or the pastime of creation. So that is where the discussion about the pastime starts, even before we get into chapter 7, where each verse talks about a particular Leela avatar in separate. So then we come to chapter 7, where we have looked into various avatars so far from verse 1 to verse 6. Now, when we come to verse 6, we are told about sages Nara and Narayan, and how they performed austerities. And that has a direct link to our verse today. Before we get into that, let's do a quick look into what the verse today is trying to tell us. So there are 4 basic things that the verse today is trying to tell us. A, the character of Lord Shiva. B, the difference in tolerance level between Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu. Number 3, the characteristics of Lord Vishnu, part of, there are unlimited qualities and characteristics of the Lord, but only part of it is being discussed in this verse today. And number 4, the teachings that we can gather from the examples being given by such great devotees as Lord Shiva or Bhrigu, and of course the characteristic of the Lord. What are we being told from that? What can we learn? So these are primarily the 4 things that we can gather from the verse today. Now, we understand that from the previous verses, that when we come in contact with the material modes of nature, we are influenced by them. The Maya, or the material energy of Lord, it is the external energy of the Lord. It is impossible for a jiva to overcome that unless and until we take shelter of the Lord himself, or through one of his representatives in the form of our guru, a bona fide guru. So these material energies, they produce objects, or they produce situations that we come in contact with. And as soon as we come in contact with them, our senses, the propensity to satisfy our sense gratification increases and increases, so much so that the attachment to them becomes almost impossible to come away from. So from our understanding of the guna avatars, or Lord Brahma, Lord Vishnu, and Lord Shiva, we understand that Lord Brahma, who is who created, who is in charge of the secondary creation, he is in charge of the mode of passion. And this again, as we have studied before in the previous chapter, so Lord Brahma is in charge of the mode of passion. Lord Vishnu is in charge of the mode of goodness, or sattva gun. Lord Brahma is rajas, Lord Vishnu sattva gun, and then Lord Shiva, who's in charge of annihilation, is in charge of the mode of ignorance. But at the same time, we understand that both Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva are great, great devotees. However, they are in charge of the mode of passion and in the mode of ignorance. So despite being very, very pure devotees and exalted devotees, sometimes they do get affected. As we know, as we see in Canto 10 of Srimad Bhagavatam, where we see how Lord Brahma is bewildered, and he feels jealous, and he kidnaps all of Krishna's cowherd friends and the calves for a whole year. And how later he realized the supremacy of the Lord when Krishna himself expanded himself into every single of those cowherd boys and those calves, and did not allow the parents of those boys and those even the cows to understand that their children were missing. So Lord Brahma understood the real, the power of the Lord, and what the Lord's capable of, and what the Lord's position is. So despite being a great devotee, he gets bewildered at times. And the same happens with Lord Shiva as well, as in this verse we are talked about his anger, his wrath. But because they are great devotees, we are being told over here through two examples that every single time the devotees show some kind of adverse emotion, which is not a perfect emotion, it is actually a benediction because we get to learn from it. And we also and it is also a benediction or a boon for someone who is at the receiving end of something that these great devotees have done. And we understand what from a couple of pastimes that have been given in this verse, or have been referred to in this verse. But before going to those pastimes, we are also being told a little bit in the purport and also alluded in the verse that Lord Vishnu, who is the Guna Avatar, or the incarnation of the Guna Avatar, who is in charge of Sattva Gun, or the mode of goodness, he is above these material modes. Despite being in charge of the mode of goodness, he does not attach himself to the material energy at all. So Lord Vishnu in his incarnation, so Krishna in his incarnation as Lord Vishnu, remains in his original Swarupa, in his transcendental mode of goodness. So in his spiritual mode of goodness, he does not touch the material mode of goodness at all. So that is one of the special qualities of the Guna avatar of Lord Vishnu. So Prabhupada explains that within this material world, we all want to hear some pleasing news, but we all end up hearing corrupted news because the material world is an inverted and a perverted form of the spiritual world. On the other hand, if one hears blissful pastimes of the Lord or the Lord's pure devotees, he will or she will also become very blissful. And Lord Brahma tells Narada, as he's giving these various pastimes, Lord Brahma is trying to tell Narad Muni that not only does one get blissful or taste the Sat or Chit Ananda, the Ananda of that Sat Chit Ananda, which is our true identity, because we all come from the Sat Chit Ananda of the Lord himself. So when we hear the pastimes of the Lord, it gives us a sense of that bliss, of that Ananda, and it also purifies our soul. And so the pastimes we will hear today, as mentioned, referred to in this verse, has the same purpose as what Brahma is trying to say, and what Prabhupada also tries to explain in the purport. It is meant to give us bliss, and it is also meant to purify us. So Lord Brahma talks about 24 Leela avatars in this chapter. And in the last verse, in verse 6, we hear about Nara and Narayana Rishi, where Vishnu incarnates in the status of these two sages who lived in the Himalayas in Badrinath, and they performed severe austerities to give example to the people of this material world, and to show them that we are that the human form is made for performing austerities to connect to the Lord. But one of the things that is also mentioned is in verse 6, which has a continuation into this verse, is the reference of Kamadeva or Cupid. So in the previous verse, we have heard how Cupid tried to, the Indradeva and all, sent lots of apsaras and, tried to break the austerities of Narayana. And he also sent Kamdeva or Cupid. Now, the arrows of Cupid, Cupid's arrow flower, that has 5 heads, as we know. And these 5 heads are the heads of lust, because Cupid is the symbol of lust. And his arrows have 5 heads. The first head is that of exhilaration. What do we mean by that? So when we see something, so we are in this material world, say for example, whether it is an attraction for the opposite sex, or attraction for an expensive object, attraction for a favorite food, as soon as we see that object of attraction, the first feeling is that of exhilaration, that of real happiness of wanting to get that. The second head of the arrow, of Cupid's arrow, is that of agitation. So once we have that exhilaration, the second is of agitation, agitation of how can we acquire that. Okay. Now, after that, after this agitation, there is bewilderment. That's the third head, where we may or we might or we may not get that object of attraction, but there is some kind of bewilderment of, either of happiness, which is, which is unexplained, or there is a sense of saturation, or, not understanding what to do with it. So I've got it, I've eaten my favorite food. What do I do now? So I have married, or I have, got the object of my attraction, whether it's someone of the opposite sex, or, I've bought a very expensive mobile. What do I do with that now? So there is that sense of bewilderment. The fourth head of Cupid's arrow is that of drying up, or rather full saturation, because lust, in this material world, lust always have a start, a middle, and an end. So there is a lot of excitement right at the beginning, but there is that middle when, come to the bewilderment, what do I do now? But there is also the complete saturation. Okay, so I've had this mobile for a year and a half, 2 years. A new model is out in the market. I don't really want this anymore. I want the new one. There is always the want for more. And what happens? Because of this full saturation, we come to the 5th stage, or the 5th head of Cupid's arrow, which represents suffering. So the whole of lust ends in suffering, because we are suffering because we want to get more and more. There is the hankering for wanting for more sense gratification. And that is the purpose of lust. And that is in contrast to what bhakti teaches us, devotion teaches us, or what the Lord or Lord Krishna represents. Krishna represents love. So the first teaching, by referring to Kamdeva and referring to lust as represented by Cupid or Kamdeva, is to immediately draw our attention to the fact that, don't go for lust, but go for love. Because the love has the eternal side to it. The love for God has the eternity in it. Whereas lust has a beginning, a middle, and a definite end. And the end comes with pain and suffering. So then this Kamdeva, the reference of Kamdeva, is brought into verse 7, where we are talked about where the pastime of how Lord Cupid wanted to entice Lord Shiva is also referred to. So the pastime goes as, once the Devatas or the gods, they were being troubled very much by the demons. Now, in the heavenly planets, there is this constant war between the demons and the gods. And Lord Indra, the king of the gods, he wanted somebody to be very, very strong enough to be able to defeat the demons. There was one particular demon who was really, really troubling the gods. His name was Taraka. So what Indra and the gods had in mind was that they thought, we've gone, usually when the gods are in trouble, they usually go to Lord Brahma. They go to Lord Brahma and then they ask for, what do we do? And then Lord Brahma goes and prays to the Lord, the Supreme Lord, Lord Vishnu, and then gets advice from Vishnu, and then comes and says that to the Lord, to the gods, to the Devatas. But this time, Indra and the gods thought, let's go to Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva, he's very strong. He's a great devotee. He's very strong. He's got that, brilliant trident with him. So let's go to Lord Shiva and he'll be able to help us. But it was more than that. They thought, so as we know from from the pastimes of Lord Shiva's wife Sati self-immolated herself because she wanted to disassociate her body from her father Daksha, who did not really like Lord Shiva and failed to invite him to a very big event. Sati went to the event despite Lord Shiva asking her not to go there, but Sati went there, and Daksha, Sati's father, insults Lord Shiva, really, really badly. Sati takes that so badly that he wants to disassociate herself from her father, and she wanted to get rid of the body that was given to her by her father. As she was the daughter, so and daughters come from parents in that sense. So she burned herself and got rid of her body. But obviously, we know the eternal consort of Lord Shiva is Sati or Mother Parvati. So she came back as Mother Parvati, and she was again, she was born in the Himalayas, as the daughter of the Lord of the Himalayas, and she was performing austerities to be able to get Lord Shiva as her husband. So the gods, they thought, okay, what we want is Lord Shiva and Lord Parvati, they are, eternally, they are consorts anywhere. So we want them to unite, and we want a son to be born of that union. And that son would be extremely strong, and so strong that they will be able to destroy the demons. And that was the purpose. So Lord Shiva, as we know, he is in Kailash, Mount Kailash, and he was in his meditation, being a great devotee. So Indra sent Kamadeva or Cupid again, and Cupid wanted to entice and break Lord Shiva's meditation. But Lord Shiva, being a great devotee, he was not enticed, and that is the character of a great devotees. Great devotees are not attracted at all to lust. They are not attracted at all to, you know, any kind of sense gratification that will pull them down to and attach them to material entanglement and further them or detach them away from the Lord. So Lord Shiva, because his meditation was broken, he got very angry, and he, with his third eye, he looked at Cupid, and he burned Cupid to ashes. Now, then Mother Parvati came, and then Mother Parvati pleaded with Lord Shiva. Now, we know that the other name of Lord Shiva is Ashutosh. So he is very easily satisfied, or he's, you know, very easily calm. He gets angry very easily, but at the same time, he also, his anger drops very quickly and very, very easily as well. So we know that. So Mother Parvati requests Lord Shiva to you know, to forgive Cupid, but at the same time, you know, we know that the wrath of Shiva, it is also, as we were talking earlier, the wrath or the anger or of any devotee actually ends as a boon for somebody else. So we've also seen in the example of Putana, when, you know, Krishna, he was angry because Putana came to kill him, but his anger turned into, you know, liberating Putana. He killed Putana, but he also liberated her. So the anger of the Lord or the devotee of the Lord actually ends up as a boon. So when Mother Parvati asked Lord Shiva to forgive Kamdeva or Cupid, Lord Shiva gave Cupid the boon that he will be born as the son of Krishna in Dwapar Yuga. So he will be born as the son of Krishna and Mother Rukmini in Dwarika in Dwapar Yuga, and his name will be, does anyone know the name of Cupid's son? Is incarnate, you know, when he took birth again? Does anyone know? So he was born as Pradyumna. So he was born as Pradyumna, as the son of Krishna and Mother Rukmini in Dwarika in Dwapar Yuga. And Cupid's wife also took birth in Dwapar Yuga, and she was reunited with Pradyumna during the time in Dwapar Yuga again. So when talking about the character of Lord Shiva, so there are two things that we learn from this pastime. A, that yes, Lord Shiva, despite being a true devotee, sometimes he is overcome with material attachments, or in this case, he's overcome by anger. However, because he's a true devotee, his anger actually becomes a boon, or his anger is actually a boon in disguise. So this is what we see as from the first example, that yes, this is that Lord Shiva and his wrath, his anger is mentioned. And then we come to the second pastime, where we come to the point where we were talking, what else does this verse want to tell us? This verse is also wanting to tell us what is the comparison, the verse is also trying to give us a comparison in the level of tolerance between Lord Shiva, one of the Guna avatars, and Lord Vishnu, the other Guna avatars. We have earlier mentioned that Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, in charge of the modes of ignorance and passion, they are sometimes, they get attached to the material modes, because it is still very much three modes of nature. They are still very much within the power of the material energy. Whereas Lord Vishnu, is completely detached. The material energy is not able to touch Lord Vishnu. And how do we understand that? We understand that from the second pastime that is referred to in this verse. Prabhuji Mataji, just give me a sec. I think 1 sec. Apologies. So the second pastime, in the second pastime, we are told about Prigumani. So this pastime comes in Srimad Bhagavatam in Canto 10. So once there was a group of sages who were performing a yajna or sacrifice on the banks of river Saraswati. And then there was a controversy amongst them, and they were on a debate amongst them that who's the chief amongst the three deities, Lord Brahma, Lord Vishnu, or Lord Shiva? Who is the greatest of them all? So then, Prigu Rishi, or the sage Rishi, he wanted to test all three of them. So he went to test them. So to test them, first he went to his father, who is Lord Brahma. So Prigu Rishi is the son of Lord Brahma, who was situated in the mode of goodness. And Prigu Rishi went to his father and failed to pay obeisances to him, or failed to glorify him, or failed to pray to him. Now that, as we know, is an absolute must, as we see in the Vedic scripts. You have to pay obeisances and pay respect to your elders, and that's we are talking about Lord Brahma over here. Sage Prigu failed. He didn't do that. He did not respect Lord Brahma at all, did not pay his obeisances at all when he went to Lord Brahma. And this angered Lord Brahma. So we see there is that touch of ego. So that why am I not being paid obeisance? And that is what is being taught here. Lust in itself is preceded by ego or pride. So the pride is, and that is what Prabhupada mentions in one of his purpose, that lust is always preceded by pride, the pride or the ego that, I am worth, or I'm worthy of having something. So if I see my favorite food and I want that, and I really, really crave for that, and I really want that, and hunger for it, before even wanting that is the understanding in me that I am worth wanting that. That I am, there is that, I'm not somebody, who does not deserve that. I am completely deserving of something which I am wanting. So there is that pride that comes before even that lust comes in. So that gives rise to anger. And in the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 2, Krishna tells Arjuna how attachment to anything comes from all of this, From the attachment the first thing comes from that sense of I. The whole attachment comes from that sense of I, that I want something, but even more than that, I deserve something. And because I deserve something, I want that. So that Prigu Muni understood that, okay, Lord Brahma has a bit of that in him. So he goes to Lord Shiva. And then when he goes to Lord Shiva, again, he angers Lord Shiva as well, because he goes there and he says, oh, look at you, you smell so much, and you don't even look good, you're covered in ash, etc. And he angers Lord Shiva. He did not even want to embrace Lord Shiva, saying that, how can I do that? Because, you're just covered in ashes and you're smelling, etc. Lord Shiva got very, very angry. He raised his trident and he literally wanted to kill Prigu. But then Mother Parvati calmed Lord Shiva down and pacified him. So Prigu understood that even Lord Shiva is capable of, falling and into that danger or that trap of anger. And then he goes to Lord Vishnu. And Lord Vishnu, he was lying he was lying with his head on the lap of Mother Lakshmi. Because he was lying down, where Sage Phrigu went there and he saw the Lord and he kicked the Lord on his chest. The Lord just rose up. Now, the Lord could have got very angry, but he did not. As the Lord immediately, he was in a lying position, he got up and he apologized to Sage Phrigu, saying, I'm so sorry, you're a Brahmin, and I should have, seen, and I should have, paid proper respect to you. Please accept my apologies, and please take a seat, please rest a while, and please tell me, how can I serve you? And that is how Lord Vishnu treats Prithu Rishi. And this is the Lord who is in charge of the whole creation, material creation. So Prithu Rishi understood that, despite being in charge of the mode of goodness, which is still under material energy, the Lord himself is completely detached from this material energy. So he goes back to the sages and he relates the three stories to the sages and told them how Lord Shiva and Brahma, they got angry. However, how Lord Vishnu is completely detached and he did not get angry at all. So there we see this verse is also telling us a bit about a comparison between, the level of tolerance between the Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu. However, not at all condemning Lord Shiva, because he is a great devotee, but allowing us to understand that even in that wrath, even in that anger of Lord Shiva, there is a benediction and a boon hidden. But whereas Lord Vishnu, he doesn't even come into all of these. He's completely detached. So then we talked about the characteristics of the Lord. And there are two things that are drawn to attention in this verse. A, that the Lord is Atmarama, and B, the Lord is Apta Karma. So, what is Apta Karma? Apta Karma, as Prabhupada mentions in the purport, is that the Lord does not have to depend on anyone to fulfill his desires. So the Lord is Atmarama, the Lord is completely satisfied, and the Lord is completely happy in himself. All he has to do is, if he needs something, he just invokes his internal energy takes care of everything. If he wants to do pastimes, his internal energy will go as incarnations and create and do loads of pastimes. If he wants to, be somebody's son, or he will come as, the son of Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda in the material world. So his internal energy can do everything, whether it's pastimes with Radharani, which is eternally doing at all times in the spiritual world, but he continues that even in this material world, as we know. And or any other pastime, whether it's Lord Narsingadev saving Prahlad Maharaj or any other pastime, we know that the Lord is able to do that from his internal energy. So the Lord is completely satisfied in himself, and he's up to karma, so he does not have to depend on anyone to fulfill his desires. So he's able to do that by himself. Okay, but what happens in our case? In our case, we need the help of others to be happy. Plus, not only that, we depend on others to be happy. Not only that, we have to make an effort, not just a tiny bit of effort. We have to make a huge amount of effort to bring happiness into our lives. In this material world. So just again, I go back to the example of food. But say, for example, we want to make one of our favorite food dish. So first we have to go and buy the ingredients. Then, if we are cooking, we need to chop or cut, and then, prepare, cook. So there's a whole process. And after cooking, if we need to, keep it in the fridge, if it's a cold dish. So there's a whole process. And after all of this process, after, all the time we've spent in preparing that food, in the end, okay, fine, we have that food, and that food has gone into our stomach within seconds, within minutes. And then that's over. And then we go back to, what happens to lust? It gets into, saturation. It gets into, I want a bit more. I want something else now. So for us, we are neither Atmarama, we are not, nor are we Apta Karma. We cannot fulfill our own desires. And that is the stark difference that is being told to us. However, what we are being told in conclusion is that all of this is possible. A true devotee can become a self-pleased man. How? Because a true devotee is always in the mood of service to the Lord. So in that service to the Lord, the devotee is always happy in himself, because the true devotee can become an Atmarama if he completely detaches himself from the external effects of the material energy. Even if he's a sannyasi and he leaves everything, and he is in, he only has the task of, devotion to the Lord. But if he is a grihastha, or if he's in any of the ashrams gives us proper way to be in that proper ashram, whether we are in a brahmachari ashram, we are in grihastha ashram, vanaprastha ashram where we are retired, or we are in the sannyasi ashram, we can practice devotion in the complete way. How? By totally surrendering unto the Lord, by dedicating what we have to the Lord. If we are, if we are working, dedicating that service to the Lord, and thanking the Lord for giving us work, thanking the Lord for giving us the food to eat, for the shelter to live in, for our family, for our close ones and loved ones. So all of this, we keep the Lord at the center, or as we are told by the acharyas, do Krishna's sansar. Sansar is family, or yes, it's family. So you don't live in your family, but always think that you are living in Krishna's sansar, or make your family as Krishna's sansar, making Krishna the center of attraction, and doing all that you are doing, because you want to dedicate it all to Krishna. You see your parents, you see your wife, husband, children, not just as being related to you, but also as children of Lord Krishna. And it is your duty to serve anyone who comes from Lord Krishna. So that sense of attachment and centering everything to Krishna is what makes one being in Maya, in this material world, but not being attached to Maya, by surrendering unto the Lord. So we are being taught in this verse, in conclusion, that yes, we as the jivas do not have the capacity to become Atmarama, or or fulfill all our desires, but through devotion we can definitely be satisfied. We can definitely taste that bliss of being a servant of the Lord, of serving the Lord. And in conclusion, we are told that yes, although the Lord himself is perfectly able to keep himself happy, he's an Atmarama, he's perfectly able to fulfill all his desires, he's an Aptakama, but there is only one instance where he himself even can't do that. And we see the whole thing come together in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu came only to taste the taste of devotion. The Lord is not able to understand the taste, or understand the happiness derived from the taste from being a devotee. So that is the only way where the Lord wants to hanker more. That is the only want that the Lord wants. The Lord has everything. He can satisfy himself in everything, in every possible way. The only thing he wants from us is our love, is our devotion. And that actually defeats even the Lord. The Lord wants to be defeated by his devotee. The Lord wants to, he says, to Radharani, who's the greatest devotee of the Lord, when we chant the name of Radha, and this, if you go to Vrindavan, people of Vrindavan will tell you that if you say Ra, as soon as the Lord hears even the word Ra, he rushes to that person, thinking, oh, what is happening? This person is saying Ra, and that's the first sound of Radharani. And as soon as somebody says Radha, the Lord is completely in favor of that person, because nothing pleases the Lord more than somebody who is pleasing his true devotee. And his greatest devotee is none other than Radharani. So again, to conclude, in this verse, we are given examples. We are continuing the various incarnations of the Lord. We are also talked here about Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu, and a couple of pastimes. We are told about the characteristics of Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu, a bit of variation in them, how the Lord Vishnu is completely detached, how Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva sometimes do come under the attack of modes of nature. However, they are being pure devotees, they easily overcome that, and how they overcome easily lust, as Lord Shiva did. He was not enticed by Cupid at all, but being a great devotee, the true nature of a true devotee is compassion, is kindness. So despite burning Cupid, he gave him the boon of being born as the son of Lord Krishna himself, as Pradyumna. And lastly, what teachings can we get from here? We understand the Lord does not need anybody to be satisfied, whereas we need others to be happy. And even when we're happy, we always hunger for more, because what we in this material world, most of the time we look for lust instead of love. So we are being taught over here to go for that love rather than lust. That love and the love of devotion, the love of service to the Lord is what will give us satisfaction and bliss. And the love of the Lord starts with loving people around us, our close ones, our family, the people, our husbands, our wives, our children. So start from there, because in all of them we see the picture of the Lord. In all of them Lord resides. And lastly, the Lord, despite having everything, the Lord himself hankers for the love of his devotee. He wants to taste how does it feel to be a true devotee. And that is the greatness of the Lord. So we are talked about some beautiful things about the Lord in this verse, and also about his true devotee, Lord Shiva. So with that, I conclude the discussion today. If I've made any mistakes, please do correct me. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you very much for that beautiful, auspicious talk.
Krishna Prabhuji, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to do service. Is there any reflection, any question, or should Hare Krishna, can anyone hear me? Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Dennis Prabhu, can you hear me?
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you for the
Hare
wonderful
Krishna Prabhuji,
class.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so is there any questions, any reflections before we end the class today?
Thank you for taking us through the class, Mataji. Right from the beginning, from how the Lord incarnates his functions as the Purusha avatars, how they both function as Purusha and Leela avatar, right through the pastime, the very enjoyable pastime of how Brigomuni visits all the three separations of the Lord as Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu. It's been very wonderful. Thank you so much.
Prabhuji, thank you. So should we just say Hare Krishna, the mantra together?
Yes, yes.
So
Please.
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Hare Krishna,
Krishna, Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare
Hare
Rama,
Ram, Hare
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 Rama,
Rama,
Rama
Rama
Rama,
Rama, Hare Hare.
Panchakalpatarupashcha Prasinthaivacha Adita Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.
Yeah, Srila Prabhupada ki,
Jai.
Jai,
Her Grace Panchali Kar Mataji ki,
Jai.
Jai Jai Jai. Haribol.
All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji's and Matajis. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.